Hi guys, and welcome to Escape Wheel Watch Reviews. My name is Steve, and today we're going to be reviewing the Megalith 8387M in rose gold. So I received this watch for free from the official megalithwatch.com site. I don't have to send the watch back, but you guys know the deal by now. That's not going to sway my review one way or the other. And as always, if you find yourself wanting to pick one of these up, I'll be leaving the official link down below. It's not an affiliate link or anything like that. It's just a link directly to this watch on their site, and this is the official Megalith distributor. The current retail price for this watch seems to be about $135 US. I'm currently seeing it listed at $125 plus a 10% discount if you sign up for their newsletter. I'll also be giving a discount code, hopefully right here, and then I'll also be leaving that down in the video description. Not really sure what that discount is exactly, but it is an extra discount, so yeah, hopefully you guys can use that. The watch is currently available in two different configurations that you can see here. Two pretty unusual colorways in my opinion. Not sure they will offer the solid black or steel at some point, but for now it's just these two options. I do see another option kind of further down in the description on the page, so I do see them coming out with some different options in the future. So if you're not into these two colorways, you just have to wait a little bit and you can pick up something else. The watch case, bracelet, and clasp are made of solid stainless steel. It has a sapphire crystal, a screw-down crown, screw-down case back, 100 meters of claimed water resistance, and the watch is powered by the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz movement. So if you guys are in the market for a kind of a rose gold, full rose gold speedy homage, this is definitely one to consider. I know the Pagani is another option. I don't think they have this cool dial though. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I do really like it. But yeah, let's see if I think it's worth it. Let's get into the full review. Before we do a wrist check today. Wearing my new Phoebus Proteus. This is a limited edition. This will be coming up on the channel next, I believe. So keep an eye out for that. Really cool, big, chunky bronze diver. I love it. I love it. Now let's get to the dimensions. We have a bezel diameter of 39.9, a case diameter of 42.2, thickness of 14.0, 20 millimeter lug width, lug tip to lug tip of 47.8. Even with female end links, they do protrude just a little bit, so the total length is 48.8, and sized up for my 7.5 inch wrist with 3 links removed. It weighs about 142 grams. So I think the size is pretty much spot on to the original watch. 40 millimeters at the bezel makes it wear a little bit smaller than the 42 diameter that I get when I include the crown guards here. So it is an asymmetrical case. You can see the case kind of hugs the bezel here and then protrudes on this side here. So it does wear pretty good. 14 millimeters thick, also a big number, but it does not wear that thick. You can see you got a nice thin mid case here, pretty flat, but I think it wears really good. I'm going to go outside right now and throw it on my wrist for you. And here we are on my 7.5 inch wrist. And actually this is one of the few watches that I think actually wears a little bit smaller on a bracelet. It's odd, but yeah, I think it wears a little bit smaller on the bracelet. I find the bracelet pretty comfortable. It's a little sharp on those bottom edges, but it doesn't really bother me for some reason. I know it bothers a lot of people. It doesn't bother me. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it has a really cool look to it. Those bezel numerals, there may be a shade too pink for my my liking, but I don't think it looks bad. But the case itself, it's very comfortable. You can see it hugs the wrist decently, but not great. It is pretty flat, but I think it does wear pretty good. Lots of sparkle off of the bezel insert and off of the crystal. It needs a little bit more AR coating, I'll say that, but this colorway, I don't think it's really missing too much. So yeah, it's not difficult to read or anything like that. Popping out in some direct sunlight here, you can see it's still perfectly easy to read. Again, the color on the dial and the hands, they just go really well together, and it's pretty easy to read. I've got no real problems with it at all, and I think it looks pretty good in the sun. A little bit of sparkle, a little bit of matte, and I think it all wears really nicely. I'm not a huge gold watch fan, but this thing actually does look pretty good, and getting up close you can see that texture on the dial. It looks really interesting. I'm glad they went with something like this instead of just a plain dial where it could be a little bit boring. So a little bit of interest to the dial. I think it looks really good. I say we go throw this on some straps and we'll get back to the review. Here we are on a vintage leather strap. It's kind of got a big taper to it, and then some cream stitching, kind of matches that gold case. I think that actually looks pretty good. It's got some texture to it as well. Yeah, I like it. I dig it. Gold is one of those colors that doesn't really go with many straps, so I've only got 2 other ones that I'm going to throw it on just to kind of show you how it's going to wear. But yeah, I think that actually looks pretty good, and that's going to be the one I'd go with if I was going to put it on a strap. This strap is linked down below, by the way. But yeah, really happy with that. And here we are on a dark blue Perlon strap, and I'm starting to realize really quickly that rose gold and yellow gold look completely different on blue straps. This does not look good in my opinion, but it is what it is, and yeah, we will. Yeah, we'll just say that. But it's 1 layer underneath the watch. It wears fine. Got no issues with that. Just don't like this color on it. I'm going to have to stick to black straps on this thing or the bracelet. And here we are on the last strap of the day. This is a seatbelt nylon strap. 2 layers underneath the watch there. And it's up a little high, but still very comfortable, and I think it looks pretty good. And that black just kind of cements the idea that black is the only color strap that's going to look good on this. Yeah, didn't really like anything else I threw it on, so it's either black strap or the bracelet. If I could just find something with some rose gold hardware, I think this would actually look pretty good. What do you guys think about that? Alright, let's go back inside and let's get back to this review. Alright, so let's talk about the case finishing on this thing. So case finishing is actually pretty nice. I'd say a step above the Pagani design that I have. It's a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces. So you have this little brushing on the inside of the chamfer there on the lug, kind of sloping towards the bracelet itself. And then you've got these really nice polished chamfers that kind of swoop from one lug tip all the way around to the other lug tip. The transitions here, where the Pagani was pretty sloppy, these ones are pretty tidy, pretty nicely done, and I'm overall pretty happy with them. You've got a nice horizontal brushing on the sides of the case here, and again, really nicely done. I've got no major issues with that. I think they look pretty darn good. Flipping it over to the case side here, you can see again, nice horizontal brushing, nice polished chamfer, broken up by these little slots for the pushers and the crown here. Nice signed crown. Got no problems with that. I think the Megalith logo is pretty cool. But yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Again, no real complaints with this crown. This top edge of the crown might be a little bit sharp, but it's not really a big deal. It's one of those watches where you set once a year, and yeah, that's pretty much all you mess with the crown. So it's not a huge deal at all in my opinion, and I think it looks pretty good. Flipping it over to the case back here, and you can see we've got a very familiar case back. Again, I mean, this watch is pretty much a one-to-one copy of the Pagani design. I don't see any differences. This one is obviously branded Megalith, water resistant. It's got the model number there. It's got the same space motif on the back here. Nicely done case back. Everything is nice and smooth. Simple notches to get a tool in there. And I think everything is done pretty nicely. And you've got circular brushing on the bottom of the case itself. Again, no real problems with this. These edges, they might be a little bit sharp, but they don't really bother me. So yeah, I think this is just, it's sitting high enough off the wrist, that edge there, that it doesn't really make contact with the wrist all that often. So it's not a big deal in my opinion. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty impressed with the case finishing on this thing. I'm happy with it. Yeah, so let's talk about the bezel on this thing real quick. Not a rotating bezel or anything like that. It's just a stationary bezel. And you can see here, it kind of has that dish look to it. Very similar to the real Speedy. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. You can see you have a ceramic bezel insert, really nice and shiny. The printing in it is done really nice, very crisp, clean. I see no real issues with it. The 120 here, which should be directly at the 6 o'clock, it's a little off. So I don't know if the dial is off or if the insert is off. It's a minor thing. I know most of us aren't really using a tachymeter for tachymeter functions. It's just for the looks. But that is something to keep in mind. So I think the numerals might be just a little off. It's pretty much spot on at the 12 o'clock position here. But 6 o'clock is definitely off a little bit. I noticed the Pagani is the same way. The paint that they use to fill this, it's a little bit too pink in my opinion. And again, I think that's the same complaint people had with the Pagani. And again, I think these are the same exact watches. just branded a little differently, and maybe a different dial here, so which we'll talk about in just a second. All right, so let's talk about the crystal on this thing. So we will test it for sapphire real quick. It is positive for sapphire. It's not a surprise. It is a sapphire crystal. I don't see any anti-reflective coating on it. On this colorway, it's not a big deal. And the Pagani, which is like all black, it's a problem. On here, not a big deal at all. It's a double dome sapphire crystal, so you got really nice clarity in the middle there, even at the high angles. Lots of distortion on the edges. It's a good crystal. I've got no real complaints with it on this model here. I think it looks pretty good, and for the price, I think you're not really going to do a whole lot better than that. I do wish they would put some anti-reflective coating on it. That's really my only complaint, and on this particular model, and I think even the blue one that they have, it's not really going to be a problem reading the dial. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I think the crystal is fine. Definitely not a highlight of the watch, but it's not really a negative of the watch in my opinion either. All right, so let's talk about the dial on this thing. And the dial is really a really cool color. It is very rose gold, kind of tannish, kind of pinkish. I think it looks cool, and it has that really nice texture on it. I believe this is kind of like their meteorite texture. This is obviously not trying to be meteorite being rose gold, but it's got that texture on it, and I think it looks really cool. Getting up real close here, you can see it kind of plays with the light here and there, and I just think it looks nice. They did a good job. They picked a nice dial for this, and I don't believe that this is an option on the Pagani. I think they just use like a regular flat dial. So yeah, this is something different, and I like it a lot. You've got your sunken subdials here as well. Concentric circles in the middle. Nice simple printing around the outside. Yeah, no real issues with it. Gold hands on those subdials. I think they look nice. All the indices are applied pretty well. I don't see any problems with them. This 12 o'clock one is a problem, and on other watches it's a problem. On this one, they are pretty much spot on. Really nicely done. There you can get a nice view of the applied Megalith logo. Again, really nicely done. You have little lume plots in each one of these hour markers. The lume is bad. We'll get to the lume here in just a second, but it does have lume there. It does have a 4:30 date window here. I know some people would like them to just get rid of it. I agree. I think it would look a lot better without that date window. I know some people kind of live and die by that date window, so it's one of those balancing acts that the manufacturer has to make. They have to make a choice whether to include that or not. Personally, I don't really care about the date too much on a watch, so I would prefer the more clean aesthetic. But I know I know there's a big group of people that really they say they need that complication. So yeah, it is what it is, right? If you like it, get it. If you don't like it, don't get it. Getting back to the dial though, the handset on it, really nicely done, nice size, black glossy hands. They contrast beautifully with that dial. I have no problems reading it. I think they're the perfect length. That second hand, really nicely done with that kind of, it's not really a paddle, but it just looks nice. They did a really good job on that. Very happy with it. And overall, I think the dial on this thing is really, really pretty. Yeah, not much else to say about it. They did it nicely. They didn't screw up any proportions or anything like that. Some people have mentioned that the logo is a little big. It is a little bit big, but you know, you got to balance it between this or the Pagani design text, which I know people hate as well. So yeah, I don't think it looks too bad in person though. But yeah, I think otherwise, I think the dial is done pretty nicely. The lume, on the other hand, is not. So I'm going to pop up the lume shot right here. Here you can see it against the Speedy on the right, another watch on the left here. And yeah, it's just not good. It's just not good. The area for lume is small, and the lume on the hands, it just fades immediately. Don't buy this for the lume. It's bad. All right, so let's talk about the movement in this thing. And the movement is the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz. Really nice movement. I've got no problems with them. 2 or 3 year battery. I can't remember. I think 2-year battery. And it's got this really nice chronograph sweep here. So I've been letting this thing run for about 30 minutes. It will eventually stop at the 60-minute mark. But yeah, it's a nice chronograph. Like I said, 2-year battery. The accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds a month, so it's very accurate. I've had no problems with them in the past. They're great. It is operated by this 3 o'clock screw down crown here. Screw in, screw out action. It's a little gritty, but not too bad. First position here does nothing. Second position will change your date. Can't remember which way to change it. There you go. So rolling it forward changes the date. Third position here, whoops, we'll hack the movement there. And this is where you set your time. Everything functions just like you would expect it to. It's a nice movement. I got no problems with them. I've had them in so many watches, and they're great. Yeah, really no issues with this. The screw in action, again, a little gritty, but not too bad. And it's one of those things, again, where you set the time once and you're done with it for a year. So yeah, not a big deal. The chronograph functions here. So I already have it started here. So I would press the top button here to stop the chronograph. Bottom button here resets it. Nice solid feedback to both of those. Yeah, I've got no problems with it. 5 ticks per second of the chronograph hand. So nice smooth sweep there. You can get a pretty good reading on the tachymeter scale here if you're really into that. But yeah, otherwise it functions great. You have 24-hour counter here at the 3 o'clock position. You got your running seconds hand here at the 6 o'clock position. And look at that. That actually almost hits the spots right on. Minor thing, but nice to see. And then you have your 60-minute counter here. Yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know about the movement. It's good. It's reliable. It's accurate. What else do you need? All right, so let's talk about the bracelet on this thing. And the bracelet is pretty good, actually. Again, it is, in my opinion, a direct copy of the Pagani design bracelet. It's 20 millimeters. You can see here it tapers down to 18 millimeters at the clasp. It's comprised of 5 solid links. So you have your outer links here. You get these little tiny polished links there. Those are separate pieces. And then you got your middle link here. So 5 links. It's got some jangle and it's got some flex to it. So in my opinion, it's very comfortable. People have always complained about this bottom edge here being sharp. It doesn't feel any different than the Pagani design, in my opinion. But I mean, it's never bothered me even on the Pagani, and it doesn't bother me on this watch either. So if it did bother you on the Pagani, I don't think it's any better here. I also don't think it's any worse here. So just something to keep in mind. I've always liked this bracelet. But I know I'm kind of in the minority there. The end link fitment here, there's a little bit of wiggle in there, as you can see and hear. It doesn't really translate to rattle on the wrist or anything like that. And you can see here these links, when they get folded up on each other, they rub on each other. So you're going to get some marks there. I've only had this watch for just a few days, and it's doing that. It did the same thing on the Pagani, but female end links, so nicely done. They pivot down nicely, keeps the lug to lug really short on it. I'm very happy with it. I think the finishing on the bracelet is actually pretty good. You know, the brushing is nice and consistent all the way through. The ends are also brushed here. You've got push pins for sizing. I had a heck of a time sizing this watch. I know that was a complaint on the Pagani as well. The gold PVD that they do, they must apply it to every surface on this thing. So the inside of these holes, they shrink a little bit, just a little bit, but enough to make these things a pain in the butt to get out. So I had to break out my actual metal tool here. The plastic ones just weren't cutting it. So yeah, I had to use this one here, and I finally got it out. It was a total pain though, so just be aware if you're going for the gold, you might need to take it somewhere to get it sized, or at least get yourself a nice solid tool to use. But yeah, otherwise I think it's a pretty good bracelet. Folded clasp here, milled 2-button pushers, pretty nicely done. Megalith branding in the top here, all brushed on the top, brushed on the sides, nice polished chamfer here. So I think it goes well with the case. Nicely rounded on the bottom edges. It's not sharp or anything like that. The tolerances in here are nice and tight, really nice and tight. So I've had no problems with this thing, you know, accidentally opening or giving me problems when I'm trying to close it. And just like the Pagani, it does have this really worthless extension here. It's too big for a sweaty day, probably too small to go diving with. They just need to ditch that. It's a weak point of the bracelet. Really, I mean, you don't really notice it, but it can't be any, I don't know, it just can't be any worse if you take that out. So I think they should just take it out, save themselves some money, and yeah, just don't put it in the watch. This is not a diving watch, and it's too big for a sweaty day. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it's just a carryover thing, and they just need to get rid of it. I see no point in it. But otherwise, the clasp is pretty nice. Yeah, no problems with it. I think it's a good size too. And I think the bracelet overall, if you can get past the sharpness here that people seem to complain about, and the sizing, yeah, I think it's a perfectly acceptable bracelet at this price. So there you go, guys. That is the Megalith 8387M in rose gold. Really cool dial texture on this thing. You got to ask yourself if you're willing to pay a little bit extra for the Megalith branding and for this dial. You know, the Pagani is under $100 consistently. This one is a little bit more than that. But you're not getting the Pagani design brand, which I know a lot of people hate, and you're also getting that pretty cool dial. So yeah, I'm going to leave that up to you guys whether you think it's worth it. I think it's a good watch, but in my opinion, it is the exact same watch as the Pagani design PD1701, which I did review, and I don't think there's anything different besides the branding and this dial. I think the watches are the same, coming out of the same factory, everything like that. So yeah, I think it's a good watch. You know, that is one of their best-selling watches, and for good reason. It's a great value. This one is a little bit higher priced. Hopefully with my discounts we can get it down, and yeah, I think you're gonna like it. If you like the style, if you like these colors that are available, I think you're gonna like the watch. So yeah, I think that's about it for me, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.